Hey everybody, welcome back to Laptop Seniors. Today it's going to be all about restaurants in and around Boquete, Panama. This is a big thing if you're usually retired, because retired people tend to eat out a lot. I certainly know that there's people on both sides where they're on a sort of a fixed budget and they can't do it very much, but you actually can in Boquete, and I'll show you how. And then there's just regular people who, middle class, or I guess rich too for sure, where they're retired and it's a big deal to go to a restaurant. And it's not necessarily as a restaurant for an experience, although that's certainly part of it for some times, but a lot of it is just for a fill-up. We did a survey once a while back, and do you go to a restaurant for a fill-up? In other words, you just go in, you want a reasonably priced meal that's pretty decent in an okay restaurant, and you just want to eat and get out of there, okay? And then there was, do you go for the experience where you're paying a little bit more and you're there for the evening and it's a night out and all that stuff. And the whole thing usually would fall somewhere, and we've did it a bunch of times, it usually falls like 80-20. 80 for the fill-up, 20 for the experience, sometimes 90-10. And in Boquete, there's all of that and more. So we're going to be going through the restaurants in Boquete, not all of them, but we'll give you a good sense of what's there. We're also going to be doing something a little bit different and taking it a couple steps farther, and it will be really interesting knowledge for you if you're new to the country or you're thinking about coming here. Things like tips, like how much do you tip? What's involved in tipping? What's the thinking? What's the bill look like? Because the bills can be confusing, and you have to be able to tell, hey, did they already put a tip on this bill, or am I tipping on top of myself that I've already tipped? And then there's the pensionado discount. That's a whole nother deal, and I'm going to explain all that to you because it's not as cut and dry as people make it out to be. Like, oh, you got your visa, show your pensionado visa card, and you're good. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. At least that's not been our experience. For some restaurants, they make it difficult. They don't really want to give it to you. It's only a few, but you'll definitely encounter it. So we're going to go through that. And some other things that I'm definitely going to give you an idea of. This is what the gamut is of pricing and restaurants and that type of thing. For instance, just as a quickie, you can go to a little mom and pop restaurant, or you can go all the way up to a Michelin star restaurant in Boquete. So let's start at the beginning. First off, there are a lot of restaurants in Boquete, in this little town proper, and also around it. I've heard estimates from 70 to 90. There's way more restaurants in this town, in this area, than should ever be there for a normal, little town of this size in Panama, except that there's a lot of retirees here, and a lot of retirees have money. So people, have opened restaurants, chefs from around the world, and these are like world-class chefs for a lot of them, and they own 2, 3, 4 restaurants back in the States, and they open one here. It's that caliber of restaurants that you see that should never be in this town, but they're there. Most of them, at least a lot of them, I shouldn't say most of them, a lot of them are downtown. They're within walking distance easily. They're, the whole town is only, like I mentioned to you, 1.5 miles going in either direction, wide or lengthwise. It's a really small town. So you can walk to a lot of them, but then other ones you're going to need a car because they're out on the highway, or they're up in the mountains, or in the hills, or whatever, that type of thing. As an example, there's a Michelin star restaurant at Finca Lerida, okay? That's the coffee plantation that we had in one of the other videos. And you're not walking up there. You definitely have to drive, or you could take an Uber. Something else, restaurant prices are not cheap. There's thousands of YouTube videos about Panama where people are in and they show you the bill, and they're, oh my God, both of us just ate, and we had a drink, and we had this, and the whole bill was $13. Yes, you can get that, and I'm going to show you that. And there's more than a few nice little restaurants. They tend to be fondas, which are little mom and pop. Sometimes they're like almost like a fruit stand, except that they're little restaurants. People will eat outside. Maybe they're covered a little bit. Sometimes they're inside. And there's those, and you can definitely come out, with eat a meal for 2, definitely lunch for $10. And you're having a really good meal, a great lunch. But the brunt of the restaurants are not that, and I'll show you that. For a frame of reference and actual numbers, In Boquete, when we put this together and, we were gathering the numbers, it would have been like the winter of 2023. And the prices were roughly, you'd see it in restaurant after restaurant after restaurant of the mid-size, mid-tier restaurants, like the Olive Garden type thing, okay? The main entree would be like $13, and it was pretty much everywhere, 13, 13, 13, 13. If you wanted to kick it up a little bit higher and go into maybe carne, which is, like some sort of a meat dish, steak, something like that, or whatever, but it wouldn't be like a sirloin or a ribeye steak. It would just be, you're just jumping up into meat, basically, beef. It'd be like 15, 16. So that would sort of be the top end, where a lot of the other meals would be like $9, $10, $11. So that's kind of the way it would be for the entree. 9, 10, 11, 13, 15, 16, okay, US dollars. Restaurants can be hard to find if, they're not obvious as you drive down the main drag. Like if you go by Restaurant Row, which is on the north end of Boquete, they're one right after another. And they're hard to find because I would say it sort of felt like, they didn't go every single one of them, but it seemed like maybe 90% or 85% of all restaurants in the area, they didn't have a website. So it's not like, restaurants in North America where every restaurant has a website. There, very few do. What they end up doing is they have a Facebook page, and they also have Instagram pages. You see that, actually, we saw that in Portugal a lot too. Same deal, although the percentage of actual websites were a little bit higher in Portugal, but kind of similar. And you see that around the world, when you get out of North America, restaurants do Facebook, they do Instagram, or they do nothing. They don't have anything at all. And you just have to kind of know that they're there. And the tough part about that is when you're on Facebook or you are on Instagram, they don't really show you menus. And if they do, it's somebody has taken a picture and posted it. And usually it's not like a straight up PDF menu where you can read it easily. A lot of times they're out of focus. They're kind of, off at a weird angle that they're hard to read, or, part of it gets cut off because somebody's got their finger in the way, or they took a lousy picture, or they're dark or whatever. So it's really hard to tell what the pricing is. And invariably you're looking down at the menu and then you kind of look up and you figure out, oh, this was taken in 2019. Yeah, that can't be right anymore, given inflation and all that sort of stuff. So you kind of have to bear that in mind about the restaurants. And that's all over Panama. So I'm going to throw you some video right now that we were in different restaurants and took pictures. These are not like super reviews, but I'll definitely tell you if, this was like okay, or this was a great restaurant, or that type of thing as you're looking at the restaurant. And we'll go through some websites where you can actually see some pricing, as best we can. So you get an idea of this is what stuff costs, this is what it looks like, and this is what you get. Again, for the most part, the restaurants were good. If you're not in Boquete or you've never been to Boquete, you're probably wondering, like, what's the breadth, what's the depth of the amount of restaurants that are here? Let me give you an idea. I happen to hit this website, and it's called villa-alejandro.com. And I'll put a link below because this is actually the best website, I hit it by accident, that I've seen that actually goes through the restaurants that are in Boquete and gives you a good synopsis of them, gives you kind of a couple pictures of what they look like, and it says some things about them, and in some instances it actually even has the website where you can go look at pricing for the few that have. Like Sugar and Spice basically shows some pictures, and then they have a PDF of their pricing. Sugar and Spice Boquete, this is right on the main drag. I showed it to you in a few of the videos as, driving by. It's a great little place. It's awesome. And it's usually always packed too, especially for breakfast. So there's that. The Rock, this is a fantastic restaurant. It's a bit expensive. I'll show you some videos a little bit on the inside. And, again, if you hit this particular website, you're going to go and see the pricing. And I think, most of the entrees started like $26, $28. Again, in US terms, okay, it's not a big deal. But here, this is an expensive restaurant. But it's a really great, this is where you'd go for a nice experience, for sure. 100%. Good place. This one, Malo Cafe and Bakery, I've not been here. I'm sure it's pretty good. Restaurant in Olga's, haven't been here either, walked by it a few times, but we never went in, probably mainly because we weren't having breakfast or lunch. Usually we would have that in the apartment. But again, a lot of people mention this, that it's good. So I'm sure it is, just like Sugar and Spice. And a Boquete sandwich shop and so on and so forth. I'm going to show you the inside of this one. And also their sister restaurant that is in Alto Boquete. It's out on the highway. It's way bigger than this one. This is a local Panamanian restaurant. They have great food and the price is ridiculously low, as I'll show you. I don't remember exactly, but I'll show you when we show you the bill. But, you know, I think we had lunch there. We both had these really pretty large chicken dinners with plantains and rice and chicken and a bunch of other things. We got dessert. We had drinks and the whole thing. I think the whole bill was $9. We had been to this particular one, you know, the first time we came like 13 years ago, and they have since remodeled this one and then built the new one. Ate at this place, little hole in the wall, great pizza, really nice, and they had gluten-free. You know, because that's a big thing with us because of Vivian. She needs gluten-free. They had it right on the main drag. When I say main drag, a restaurant row where Retro Gusta is and Butcher and a whole bunch of other restaurants. It's in that stretch. And there's another restaurant, haven't been here, didn't even know this one existed. Actually, I think we drove by it. I think it's a couple streets in, on the left, you know, it's a couple streets to the left going north. Same thing with this one, El Patron, haven't been there. This is a fantastic place, awesome. And we'll show you the insides of this, and we'll show you what I got, and you'll be amazed at how large it is, because at first looking, you're gonna look down and you go like, oh, those are big potatoes. And then it's like, no, that's meat. That's meat. It's not potatoes. Oh my God. They give me like a, you know, I had gotten cerdo, which is pork. You know, it's like I had half the pig there, you know, on the plate. It was amazing. Anyway, so let me just whip through here real fast, and you get an idea of how many Big Daddies. This is another one with expats that comes up a lot. This is, basically it's a nice bar. It's somewhere between a bar and a restaurant, and, you know, and it has bar food. But it's good and reasonably priced. It's not super cheap. It's not super expensive. It's kind of, you know, this is the fill-up. This is a nice fill-up, you know, I guess, best way to put it. This is a bit higher end Butcher Chop House. This is right next to Retro Gusta. And my understanding is it's the same owner, the same chef owns them both. But I could be wrong in that. And Panamonte Inn, this is a Michelin star restaurant. This is super great. And a very well-known, famous chef that runs the kitchen, owns the kitchen probably, and coffee shops and other things. There's a lot more in here than what they show, but you get the idea. You are not going to be hard-pressed to find somewhere to eat that's pretty decent. This one comes up a lot too, Mike's Global Grill. There's a lot of stuff here to choose from. Now, let's assume that you've found a restaurant, you went in, or you just walked in off the street. Like if you're on Restaurant Row, you got lots to pick from. There's probably 8 of them right there in a row. And you walk a little bit farther, there's another 3 or 4. So you got a lot of choice, and that's just on one little block, basically. So you've eaten, and now it's time, well, what do I do for a tip? What's that deal? Okay, well, the tipping in Panama is 10%. Some websites will say 15, some will say, you know, a little bit more, but you know, you have to kind of put yourself into position of an actual Panamanian person who lives there all the time and makes less, okay? So you don't want to be, you know, you don't want expats throwing down 15% and 20%. You know, you're thinking like, well, you know, like if you're in Canada, you get shamed, you know, if you put down less than 20%. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. You know, they want a tip on a cup of coffee. You know, you go into a Starbucks and the credit card thing comes up, you know, tip with that? It's like, no. You already had to be a coffee. Like what's the deal with that? So again, some things are like crazy out of touch with reality. But in Panama, you know, with people making less money, the more you tip more, it makes it more difficult for them. So 10% is the norm, so you should do 10%. Not only because, you know, it's a little cheaper, and also that it's easier to figure. If a bill comes to $30, well, 10% of 30 is 3. Just take the first number, there's your tip. You know, if it's 35, it's 3.5, 3.5, you know? It makes it easy. So that's, you know, 2 of the reasons, and you know, on your behalf, I guess. But the other reason is you don't want to be driving up the prices for the locals, because it's not good for them. And at some point there isn't really now, but at some point there may be animosity for foreigners driving up prices and you don't want to be that person. So that's how much to tip. Now the big thing is, did you already tip already? You need to look for a word that's called propina. That's the Spanish word for tip. And you sometimes see it on bills. Evidently this was being done a lot a few years ago, and then it got to be such a hassle, and people were restaurants were making it, they were taking advantage of customers and things like that, trying to hide it and all that stuff. So I guess the government sort of did away with it, but you still see it on some restaurants where you go in and you see propina and it's added. There'll be a tip there. So if you see that, try to do the math and see, like, is that a suggestion? Because sometimes they'll suggest it, and I'll explain that. But if you see propina, usually it's been added on, and you want to do the math. So let's just say the math was, the meal was 30, then you see propina and another 3 or 325, or maybe they did 15%. And what is that? That's 450. Maybe you'll see another number, and then another subtotal that's a little higher than that. You've already paid for the tip. They've included it in the bill. If it's not included, almost always, and I'll show you some bills on the screen, almost always you'll see a thing that's suggested. And this is what the suggested wording looks like. Many times they'll give you 3 numbers that'll be 10%, 15%, and 20%. And, so in other words, if you want to tip 10%, here's the number. They already tell you it ahead of time. And it's a suggested propina, but again, the words are different. So it gets confusing. More confusing is if you're used to North America, the way the bills usually run would be you'd see everything that you're buying one after another, right? It'd be like entree, drink, 3. Number, subtotal. And then there'll be, all right, taxes are added in, and you'll see that tax, say it's a state tax, boom, it'll be added in, another subtotal, and that'll be what you need to pay, and then you throw your own tip on top of that. In Panama, for a lot of the bills, certainly the ones that come with a cash register, it can get confusing because what they do is they throw in, the items that you have, but then there's a tax and another tax and a suggested tip a couple times, and then they'll sometimes add like the numbers 2 or 3 times in there, and you don't know, is this a running total or not a running total, because they're just sort of throwing numbers on the paper, and it's not such cut and dried as add this, add that in, total. It's just not that simple for a lot of places. Now on the bill you're going to see ITBMS. That's a tax. That's the tax on food and restaurant food in Panama, and it's 7%. So you will see that on the bill. So when you see it, ITBMS, you know what it is. It's just the tax. There's another thing you may see at the restaurant itself as you're walking in. It might be a sign. You might see it also on the menu. And you might sometimes, if you don't know the restaurant, sometimes it's good to ask, is this a cash-only restaurant or not? Because a lot of restaurants don't take credit cards. Many do. It isn't like, you're hardly going to find that. And certainly in Boquete, you're going to find more than other places in Panama. But there's a lot of places where it's efectivo, and that means cash only. Efectivo, cash only, no credit cards accepted. So you'd want to know that going into a restaurant. And then sometimes, depending on the IT prowess of the restaurant, how wired they are and how much software is and stuff like that, a lot of times it'll be done, just mentally and, in somebody's mind. But, like cash registers at home, you'll see cambio, C-A-M-B-I-O, cambio, okay? And that means change. So say the bill is $25 and you've given them $30, a 20 and a 10, you're going to see efectivo 30, you see a $30 mark there, and then underneath that it's going to be cambio, and it'll be like 5 because the bill was 25, you gave them 30 cash, 25 for the bill, the cambio, the change, is $5. Okay, so now let's go into the pensionado discount, okay? You've gotten a visa, you are a resident of Panama in some form, you have a temporary, you have a permanent pensionado visa, you're over the age of 55, you have some legal reason to be in the country. You have a cedula, you have something. And you go into a restaurant and you figure, I'm going to get that 25% discount. Now you have to understand that the 25% discount is supposed to be, by law, only on the main entrees. Okay, so if you got, 2 entrees for 2 people and you got, a couple appetizers, you got a bottle of wine or a couple beers or whatever, everything else other than those entrees, they're full price. That's the way it's supposed to be. But in our experience, what I've actually found is some restaurants hold to that. And then other restaurants, when you show them your pensionato, card, or, in our instance, we show them the cedula, they knock 25% off the whole bill. And it seems to be that the more software friendly they are, the more, IT friendly, the better software they have in cash registers and things like that, they seem to lean toward the 25% off the whole bill, other than the other way around. You would assume that it would be the opposite, but it's not. And my guess is that it's too hard for the software to make the selections of what comes off the 25% and what doesn't. And it's just easier for the software that they have to just knock 25% off the whole bill, the entire one. That's been our experience. I don't know what causes that, but you will encounter that. Some restaurants will do it the way it's supposed to be. Other restaurants, they'll take 25% off everything. Now, it doesn't pertain to fondas, okay, which are the, again, like I was mentioning earlier, they're the little restaurants or the little food stands, and they're not charging you hardly anything. I mean, you really shouldn't even ask, even if they did it. We've been in places where you go in and you go like, oh my God, they'll probably, do the discount here, but I don't want to ask them because, they're probably having, a hard time making ends meet, or they're not making boatloads of money. So, why basically, tax them even more? You kind of want to be thinking of that. You go in and you get a meal and 2 people are eating for under 15 bucks. It's like, how much more do you really want to wail on somebody? I don't know. Maybe that's just us, but I mean, it just seems that way to me. Now, you're supposed to show your card before the bill comes, okay? So when you ask for a bill, because no one, like North America, someone will come up and sometimes they'll just, lay the bill down, but they see that you're done, you're done having your coffee, there's no more food on the table, you're just yakking, then they'll drop the bill down basically to get you out of there. That won't happen in Panama. You have to ask for the bill. And the way you ask for the bill is la cuenta. La cuenta. La cuenta. That means the bill. And you want to throw a por favor on the end of that, please. So the bill, please, la cuenta por favor, okay? Or you can just do the usual, hey, you do that deal. That's like universal around the world. Everybody knows what that means, and they will bring the bill. But when you do that, you want to hold up your Visa card, your permanent Visa card or your cedula, or if they come over and you ask them la cuenta, and go pensionato, and show them the Visa, because otherwise they're going to go away and they're going to bring you a normal bill. And you don't want to be in the position where, because sometimes, restaurants aren't real thrilled with it. I've seen it both ways. And I'll tell you about it. We got in one restaurant where I first had the Visa, I only had the Visa for like a couple hours. We had just got it. And we're, oh my God, this is awesome. It's fantastic. Let's use it. And we were in a pretty expensive restaurant in Panama City, and they wouldn't do it because I gave them the Visa after they brought the bill, because I forgot about it. Plus, I didn't know to give it to them first. You just assume the bill will come. You look at it, everything's good here, and they'd go away and knock it off to 25%. But they wouldn't do it. So, hand it to them right up front, show it to them, and so they know what they're dealing with before they make out the bill. And one of the other things that happened at that restaurant, they make it difficult to actually give it to you. And it was really aggravating on another level, because you do see this in different places. I've saw it twice in Panama City, never saw it in Boquete, but just to be aware of it, what we were ordering had 2 prices. They had one price that was in red, and so let's just say it's, I'll make this up, spaghetti and meatballs, okay? And there'll be a price in red, and let's just say it was $13, okay? And then there was a price in black next to it, and it would say like $19, okay? 13 and 19. And it was like that for the whole menu. So we're just assuming that, okay, well, that 13 is probably the pensionato discount. That's probably what that 13 means. Again, first time using it, no idea what the deal was, how to manipulate that thing, which is why I'm explaining it to you. You know, at the end, when the bill thing, you know, was being settled and they wouldn't do the discount, two things happened. One, no discount. You know, you should have given it to us first, which I'm sure probably if I turned them into the government, that was 100% wrong. But they were saying that that price in red was a special price, you know, for certain days only or something like that. So a lot of times they don't have to do the pensionato discount on special pricing or special deals or like Monday only, those kind of, you know, special things. You know, you're going to pay full price because they're already discounting it. Some restaurants they'll put that special price on, or they'll say something is a special price when in reality it's not, and they just do that basically to kind of you know, take advantage of you because you don't know, and more than likely you're not probably Spanish fluent, so you're not going to be able to argue. Like if that happened, you know, in an English language place, you'd be all over them like, dude, what are you doing? Blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's not happening. You need to knock this down and all that other stuff. So, you know, bear that in mind. Anyway, hope that helped you get the idea of the restaurant scene in Boquete and in Panama entirely. If you have not subscribed yet, definitely subscribe to the channel. We have one more Boquete video of our 8-video series that's going to be coming up. That'll be the next one where Viv and I are going to sit down with you and we're going to go through the pros and cons, pluses and minuses of everything that we ran across in Boquete specifically. Sort of a, you know, heads up, there's not a lot of downside, there really isn't, but we'll tell you what they are. So that'll be the next one, and that'll be coming up a week from now. And until then, subscribe, you know, hit the bell so you get notified that that new one comes, and all that other good stuff, okay? So, oh, and if you like this, hit the like button. Until that next video, thanks for watching.